Hey guys, welcome to today's video. I like to do these videos at the very beginning of the end of the previous quarter. I like to rank all of the eyeshadow palettes that I tested from worst to best. And just like last quarter, I rounded it out with 20 eyeshadow palettes tested. So I'm really excited to do today's video. These are usually really fun to do. Most of the palettes that I tried this quarter, or last quarter rather, were indie eyeshadow palettes because I have been on an indie eyeshadow haul kick lately. They're mostly indie eyeshadows with 2 sprinkled in that are like on the high end. Oh, and by the way, you guys, I did want to mention some of these palettes may not still be available for sale, but if they are, you guys, I will be linking them in the description box along with my affiliate discount codes. I do earn a small commission on the codes, but all of my codes for each one of these brands that I do have codes with will save you 10% off of your total order. And final note, I do have looks with every single one of these palettes on my channel. So if you guys are interested, you should be able to maybe just like search my videos and type in the palette name, and you should be able to find a video where I have done a look or several looks with each of these palettes. So let's start off at the bottom of the worst palette that I tried for last quarter, and we'll work our way all the way to my favorite, which is the one that I'm wearing on my eyes today. Let's get into it. So coming in at number 20 is from Black Moon Cosmetics. It's the Urban Myth palette. I think this palette's about 3 years old is when it released. It's really a cute concept. The packaging is really cute. It's got like the Loch Ness Monster, you know, it's just the idea of it's really cute. The packaging itself is very sturdy. Inside has like a mirror of a little spaceship. I like the color story here. I've seen other people review this after I picked this up because it's an older palette, so those reviews are a little bit older, but the quality from the reviews that I saw seemed really good. For me, this was just really dry. The 2 shimmers on the end are extremely dry. They have like no oils in them whatsoever. The other shimmers are a little bit better, but maybe not as good because they're maybe just not as like foiled and light reflecting. The deepest shade here out on the end, it was super patchy on me. It came out looking like extremely muddy. The green shade, same thing, just skipped. Didn't matter if I set my eyes or didn't set my eyes. I love palettes like this because generally I'm somebody who really likes things in like columns like that, where you have like a corresponding shimmer to a corresponding matte. And I even like when they have an even ratio of mattes to shimmers. Somehow that just like makes sense to me. It's appealing when I see a color story before I purchase it if it's laid out like that. But the quality here just seemed like maybe this was an older palette. You know, like this sat in stock for a long time. It just didn't get purchased because they just didn't feel like they had any oils to the shimmers whatsoever. And the quality of the mattes here didn't seem really good either. The one on the end here, that like maroon shade almost, is completely like hard panned if you look up close. Just, I think this was an older palette, so it's really hard to judge. Even though I bought it new from Black Moon Cosmetics, I feel like they've had this in their stock for a while and they just sent me something that's a little bit older. I really didn't enjoy anything about the performance of this, although I did love the color story and the packaging, all that good stuff. This is probably a palette that I'm going to end up declaring because I have these colors in other palettes and this palette just didn't perform. And that one deep shade is a shade that I really like for the outer corner, and it honestly, hard panning kind of makes it a little bit useless for me to work with. So probably not a palette I'm gonna hold on to. All right, next up is a palette from Unearthly Cosmetics. It's the Spring Magic palette. This actually is a new release. The reason this landed where it did, although I do like Unearthly Cosmetics, and it was like one of my favorite brands, I wanna say probably last year that I tried, like some of their palettes were some of my favorite. And this is a really cool color story. You have blues, greens, neutrals, pinks, and I created one of my favorite blue looks I've ever created out of this palette. Mattes here performed really well. The shimmers here performed really well. I just don't find this an overly unique formula. Like all the shimmers are very light. None of them are foiled. They're all the same. None of them are like your super special multi-chrome shades. And this is like $77 for this. So I feel like we're paying mostly for Unearthly Cosmetics packaging at this point. Not that it's bad quality, it's just that, again, I'm pretty sure there's only 2 like duochromes in here, which is this one right here and this one right here. They might be multi-chromes, I don't know, but there's not enough, I feel like, in this palette to justify the $77 price point. It's really hefty packaging, and I feel like at this point, we're paying a lot of the bulk pricing for Unearthly Cosmetics packaging. Up next, I have a set of palette that I received in PR. I do have a code with this brand. I will pop it up on the screen. It's for 10% off of everything on their site, I think, at the current moment. And I actually picked these. They gave me like a gift card that I could pick and choose what I wanted from their site, and I picked 5 different palettes, and they're all in this video. So this is the Adventure palette from Game Beauty. These are the ones that have like the trifold, they're the 10 pans. These ones are a little bit different because these are made in Italy, whereas some of their other eyeshadow palettes are made in China, but they're different formulations too, I can tell, but I prefer those ones a little bit more. The reason this landed where it did is because it's kind of a lacking color story for me. You have some shimmers in here that are like speckled, you know, the purple and the orange, and they're not overly light reflecting. They're kind of on the drier side. They're more of like a satin shade, if you will. A lot of the shimmers here are. The only two that are a little bit more light reflecting are the Stealth shade, which is a duochrome, which is pretty, and then Maze. But the other three are just, again, a little bit on the satin side, don't have a lot of pizzazz for me, and then you have one pressed glitter. So the pressed glitter is not something that I typically use. I hear a lot of people say that. It's just pressed glitters for me, I will use occasionally, but I prefer like more of a sparkly shimmer if anything, so I feel like one of these shades doesn't work for me. The mattes are nice, like it's an overall decent color story. It's just that when I'm thinking of a palette that has greens in it, I'm definitely thinking of palettes that have better shimmers than this one. So while it's not bad, like quality overall, everything blended really nicely. I think it's just mostly that the shimmers here just didn't excite me for a color story like this. If they had, I feel like it would have been very different because I love browns and greens. Love them, absolutely love browns, greens, yellows. Totally a color story thing that I would like. It's just overall, like holistically, that wasn't like a standout palette for me. All right, coming in next, I enjoyed this one a little bit more, but it's the same trifold from Game Beauty. It's the Harbinger palette. This one's a little bit different because it has two duochromes in it. It's got this one over here in the corner and then this one over here in the corner. And even though this is like a speckled shade, it's a duochrome and it's actually very creamy. A lot of these shimmers are a lot more creamy and not as dry as the Adventure palette. So they're just better quality, better to work with. This one right here, this little white one in the corner, it's on the drier side, so it kind of compares to the other three shimmers in the Adventure palette. This is just a color story that I like so much more. It's just a little bit deeper. I feel like I can do a smokier look with this. I had a better time playing with this, and again, overall here, I think that the shimmers just excited me a little bit more because you've got two duochromes and they don't feel as dry as the other ones. I like the packaging on these though. I think that it's cute. The only thing is every single time I open it, you know, I'm flipping it like this and it's upside down, which is whatever, it's fine. I do have other palettes from Game Beauty that I enjoy more than these trifolds, and we will get to those. So coming in next, you guys, this is a brand that I have really enjoyed, like their mattes mostly, but they have really standout shimmers. It's a pretty solid formula. It's the Classical Paradise palette from Ace Beauté. Again, this is so up my alley in terms of color story because it's greens and maroons. And I like all the shimmers here. They're very trusty shimmers in the way that you can wear these every day. And they're good colors for every day too. I think the thing that puts this palette really low is because it's very limiting. The three maroon kind of wine shades at the bottom, they're very similar when they translate to the eye. The shade Earth and the shade Soil, I tried to create a look like blending them together and they just didn't have enough difference to really look too different on the eye, so they kind of just looked like the same shade. When I brought in the shade Clay, it was a little bit different, but I didn't see enough gradient, enough difference between those really deepening shades in the palette. And since it's like 3 of the 7 mattes in here, it turned out to be a little bit more limiting than I was hoping. I still think the quality here is good. I think the shimmers though, they take over the mattes a little bit too much. When I'm trying to build depth in the outer corner, one of the things that I want the shimmer to do is really just like blend in with the matte very nicely. Instead, I think the shimmer here was like taking over the matte. You know, I was having a hard time like building depth in the outer corner. Some of these shimmers are really pigmented. Anyway, nice color story. Again, just too much similarity with the 3 deepening shades, but the quality is really good. Like there's no patchiness, blends really well, deepens really well, all that good stuff. All right, the next ones are actually part of the same collection and they're from Game Beauty again. The next one up is the Elemental Blast 04 Dendro palette. I like these palettes better because I think the shimmer quality is better. They're made in a different place. These are all made in China as opposed to the other 2 trifolds that are made in Italy. I love the gradients and the different colors here. The quality of the shimmers is honestly just better, like totally different manufacturer. I think you can do some really fun things with this. I like the tonal differences between the shimmers overall. You have a really fun like translucent duochrome, really good for inner corner. The reason reason this one is where it is amongst the other two that I have to show you guys is because the tones and the greens, they come out a little bit blue on my eyes. And I really wish we had a deeper green in here. And that's like the only thing that's kind of holding me back for an all green palette. It's monochromatic, but there's so much difference and variance in the tones of greens, the shades of greens, that it actually is very nice. It's just, I honestly wish this shade in the corner here, the one in Grow Grow Grow, just came out a little bit deeper of a green. I wish they had just like a hint of a deeper green, and honestly it would have been great because these are super creamy mattes. They're super creamy shimmers. They blend perfectly. I prefer these elemental palettes so much more. All right, next up from the same series from Game Beauty is the 03 Geo palette. I like this one because it's kind of a neutral palette. Again, the shimmers here, super creamy. Mattes, super creamy. You have like one super foily, super reflective shade in the corner. It's Magna. This is all in all like a really, really good palette. Like I like this palette. It's not my favorite neutral palette. The only thing here I would have liked to have seen different is maybe like a cooler tone, deeper brown, and that's it. Otherwise, I thought the quality again was just as good as the last one. These elemental palettes are really super duper creamy and really fun to play with. The next one is my favorite just because of, I think, the shimmers, honestly. This one is the Pyro palette. So it's the more like pinkish red monochromatic palette of the elemental palettes, but this Spark and Splash shade here is just delicious. It's like fire on the lid. I love it. Again, I would have liked to have seen like a deeper deepening shade. This one and this one, they come out very similar on the eyes when you try to marry the two shades together. But otherwise, there's something super fiery about this. And I have talked about like loving super fiery shades, like super fiery, even like warm toned looks on the eye. I don't know, something about like a deep orange that's not too gold on the lid. Stunning. So my recommendation would be to you guys, if you were ever interested in checking anything out from Game Beauty, I think these elemental palettes are where it's at if you like something a little bit more monochromatic. Okay, next up is a high-end palette, and it was okay. It was from Natasha Denona. It's the Golden palette. So this is her revamped version from the Gold palette, I guess. And they took out some of the more distinguishing features of the Gold palette, which was some of the teal colors. So this is primarily a more warm-toned overall gold neutral palette is what it is. I don't think it's like overly exciting to me. I have come to find that I really, really dislike the cream to powder shadows. I don't find any enjoyment in them. Like, I don't know what the reason is for it. You guys might really enjoy that. It's just, for me personally, it just doesn't do anything extra. And some of my favorite shades, like tone wise, are some of her cream to powders. I just wish they were powders. And then I do think that there are some similarities when they get to the eyes when we're talking about like the tones of the gold shimmers. Okay, and then even 3 of the browns here are very similar in tone. They just don't have a huge distinction, and this is a shimmer heavy palette. So having 3 tones of brown be super similar when they get to the eyes is a little bit disappointing. This overall, for the color story from Natasha, was not my favorite. I think the quality is, again, pretty good. I like the variety and the different textures of the shimmers that she keeps giving us in all of her palettes. Some of them are softer, some of them are a little bit more sparkly, like toppers, some are a little bit more creamy. I like the way that Natasha's formula blends in together, but yeah, like these cream shades, these cream to powders, I don't find that they blend that easily. So I don't know. I could honestly just do without cream to powder shadows from Natasha. I know there are some of you that say that you really like them and you even like tell me how to work with them, but I can't escape the fact that it's just absolutely not my favorite formula from her. I don't see the benefit in adding those shades in her palettes. So anyway, it was okay. It's a little bit like underwhelming, especially when I compare it against a lot of her other color stories that I have in my collection personally. The next one that I have, you guys, is from Give Me Glow Cosmetics. It's the Christmas Morning palette. I love the Give Me Glow Cosmetics formula. Like, I love their mattes. I love the shimmers. Like their shimmers are some of my favorite. They're usually like not overly foiled, but they're extremely creamy, and some of them have sparkles to them, and usually in their palettes they'll throw in like one duochrome, which is this green one out in the corner here. Give Me Glow does this really interesting thing where they actually make these like huge pan sizes. They may have stopped at this point, I don't know, because this palette is being phased out. I don't think they're bringing it back, so they may change the way that they lay these out, but I always think for like an 8 pan I'll never go through these shadows. But again, I love the quality here. This color story is really cool actually. Again, I like the greens, browns together. The first look that I created with this palette on camera, I thought it was really fun. Like I thought it came out a little bit grungy, a little bit smoky, but a lot of you guys said that you really enjoyed it. And like before you even posted the video, you guys were like, oh my gosh, I like your eye look, and it came from this one, and then I posted the video. Anyway, the quality here is really good. The shimmers, so good. The mattes, super creamy. They blend together very well. I don't think that this palette was necessarily needed for me. Like I bought this along with the Vintage Rose palette from them. I prefer the Vintage Rose one a little bit more because it's more everyday, but I don't think this is bad. I think you can get neutrals out of here. I think you can go, you know, with just a red look or just a green look. Again, when I'm mentioning to you guys that I like it, when you can see it in columns, you got it in columns right here. But again, it's only an 8 pan palette. Having said that I love everything else about them, I think it just kind of comes down to it's not like an immensely unique color story in my collection. Okay, I'm gonna bore you guys a little bit with the next one. This one is from Viseart. It's really just kind of a quad with 2 blushes, but I really enjoy it. It's the Fleurette Bijou. There's something so simple about the Viseart formula and like the smallness of these palettes that makes it super easy to travel and just honestly set up on your vanity and grab and create a perfect look that is really easy to put together and honestly lasts all day. Like the quality of their shadows, even on unset eyes, lasts a long time. I have had a bad collection from them before that I ended up decluttering. It was the Water Lotus collection. I found that those were like totally a different formulation, a lot chalkier. So I don't feel like every palette of theirs is created equally, except that most of their palettes I feel like perform pretty much the same across the board, and they're very good quality. This one has like a little shifty kind of fiery duochrome. It's a warm toned kind of summer palette anyway, but it's very everyday. And this was my first time getting to test their actual like pressed pigment formula, which was their blushes. They do say that these 2 shades are not safe for the eyes, so I think they're just like a pressed pigment. But the blush was so good. It blended perfectly. They were super creamy, and the cheek products lasted all freaking day. So while this is just a quad, it still gives me the feels because of the quality here and the looks that I can create. Even though they're fairly similar, you still get 2 mattes and 2 shimmers. And so, you know, sometimes like the shimmer makes the big difference. Like how different is the shimmer on your lid and how prominent is it when you're creating like an everyday look? Sometimes it really does make the eye look completely different. Next up is from Gourmand Girls. It's the Radioactive palette. This is an all shimmer palette, but look at the all shimmer. Like it's all over the place. The shimmers here are really different too. They're not all the same formula. Some of them are a little bit softer. Some of them are chunky foiled. You've got some duochromes in here, some sparkly shades. I love when critiquing an all shimmer palette because I think you have to do that. I think you not only have to do some fun duochromes and multichromes, but you also have to do different formulations. And if you're gonna do an all shimmer palette, I really think the colors make a big difference. Like how wearable are they? Truly, how much use am I gonna get out of the shades here? And I had so much fun playing with this. Some of the shades here are a little bit drier than others. I won't say that they're all like as creamy as one another, but they're still really good. I really enjoyed this. Not my favorite all shimmer palette. I'm not really sure what my favorite shimmer palette is just yet, but this is a pretty good contender. All right, I'm gonna bore you again. I have next up from Moira Beauty, the Essential Nudes. This has gotta be like a $10 palette, and it's so basic. It's just kind of a warm toned neutral palette, but Moira Beauty has a way of just doing like super everyday, wearable, quality, don't think about it eyeshadow palettes that you can really just get some amazing looks out of. I kept this on my vanity for so long. I had like finished testing it and it just sat up on my vanity because I kept reaching for this for the neutral shades when I was creating a look that was everyday, when I wanted to just rotate a shimmer from a different palette. I loved it. The shimmer formula in this palette is super creamy, and there's differences here. There's 4 shimmers that do extremely different things in this palette. Some are a little bit more sparkly, some are a little bit more pigmented and opaque and super duper creamy. Again, quality on the mattes, amazing. They blend perfectly. They blend together perfectly. They don't even look the same. There's so many tonal differences once this gets to the eyes. It's fabulous. Fabulous. Such a good like $10 palette, not gonna lie. All right, next up is from one of my favorite brands. This is from Bella Beauté Bar. It's the Basic Witch palette. I do have a code with them, you guys. It is also KARIMEGHAN for 10% off, and they've got some new releases coming that I'm super excited to pick up. At this point, there are so many palettes from her site that I still wanna get, like the Smoky Glam palette. Ooh, that looks so good. If it wasn't so big and I'm just not into big palettes, I honestly might pick it up. This one I wanted for so long and it was out of stock, and then it came back in stock. I think it's sold out again, but I could be wrong. Bella Beauté Bar is just overall like a really good brand to me. The customer service is great, shipping is great, and they're not as high priced as, for example, Unearthly Cosmetics and Ensley Rain, which in some cases have comparable formulas. She usually gives us some duochromes and multichromes in here, so you get some fun shades out of it. The mattes blend together perfectly. The textures of the shimmers are all different. I feel like she always gives us a deepening shade. This just comes down to color story for me. Like, this could have been my #1 palette. I want to say probably in 2022, the Bella Beauté Bar. Like, one of them ended up being my favorite palette. If this had just been, I don't know, a different color story for me. I think that what I find with this palette is while I can get like a deep purple pink look, I maybe have a little bit of trouble like doing anything with the mustardy kind of orangey yellow shade and then the green shade. I think the green looks good with the kind of burgundy shade in the outer corner. But aside from that, I don't reach for purples very often, and so I kind of felt like I was going for the same two looks every time I was reaching for this palette. The only variation that I was getting was when I was like changing the shimmers. And then I was just kind of using the same like deep matte in the outer corner. So it wasn't as versatile for me as it could have been, but man, there are some really, really fun shimmers in here, and overall the quality of the mattes is so good, you guys. But speaking of Ensley Rain, the Cold Moon palette from Ensley Rain is next. This is a larger palette and it's the most expensive of all of the ones I'm showing you guys today. But Ensley Rain always does like really chunky foiled multichromes in every single one of her palettes. I like this palette because it's really very cool toned and very everyday wearable. The one thing this palette really has going for it is that I can use this any day, all day, every day. I can literally grab for any shimmer, and these mattes are super wearable shades here. The color stories of Ensley Rain palettes are so appealing to me. I feel like they are so everyday wearable and not boring, and I love that this is like an all cool tone palette. The only reason I would put it where it is because I feel like once I get some of these shimmers to the eye, I'm not gonna lie, some of them actually look really similar. Surprisingly enough. So I felt like even though I was grabbing for different shimmers, I was kind of doing some of the same dark, deep shades like these two over here in the outer corner over and over. And so it was making the looks look like pretty similar. I will say that some of these are a little bit too flaky for my liking. They're not all super chunky and foiled, but the ones over here on this side, they are a little bit more difficult to work with. So some days I'm just not interested in spending more time using a glitter glue to make sure these go on, or bothering with the cleanup that these require, because, you know, sometimes I'm just looking to get up and go and just get ready. And some of these shades are definitely a little bit of a trickier formula. All right, this is a little 6-pan. This is from Shine by SD. It's the Mean Greens palette. There are 2 shades in here that are freaking stunning. When I first got this, I pulled all the shades out of like their little plastic containers and I swatched them. Oh my gosh, you guys, I fell in love with these 2 sparkly shades, the white one and the blue one. I have literally nothing like it in my collection. I think these are so cool. The quality of these are good. And the best thing about this palette for me and why it ranks where it did is because I wear these shimmers all on their own. I don't even go in with a matte shade sometimes. I literally just put this all over the lid and I'm done. And I think you get variety here, like 2 different types of green, you get 2 blues, you get a silver, and you get a really fun, super sparkly white shade that's like shifty, kind of translucent pink. Anyway, the Shine by SD formula is not lost on me. I think that this is a really good formulation and more versatile than it seems for 6 shades. All right, the next one up, I am coming to really enjoy the formulation of this brand. It's the Ultimate Cappuccino from DD Signature. It's one of her second to last releases that she came out with. She's come out with like an all matte, colorful palette, but this one does have some shimmers in it. The reason that I like DD Signature so much is because the shimmers here are always different. She always does a them in a row. Like she'll do a sparkly shade, she'll do like 2 fun chunky shimmers, and she'll do a duochrome at the end. The 2 palettes that I have from her are exactly the same in terms of like the way she lays the shimmers out differently in a row, and they go always in that order. But the mattes here were really good, and I find this is super everyday wearable palette, and I never have issues with matching the shimmers to a matte look in here. And sometimes that happens for me. I will struggle with finding like a matte shade to pair with a shimmer shade, and sometimes I'll go outside of the palette to, you know, create a cohesive look, but I don't feel like that with this. I definitely feel like you get variety, and I absolutely love the shimmers. The mattes are great, but the shimmers do it for me. Like, they're just so different. They're stunning. All right, this is the first of this brand that I have tried, and I literally can't wait to test more. It's from Diaverin Cosmetics. It's the Gloomy Gardens palette. Remember I told you guys I like things like seeing them in columns? I mean, this palette gives you 5 different columns of looks that you can create. The couple of times that I ended up creating looks, I blended the 2 columns together. So like there's variety, there's versatility here. The shimmer formula, you have 2 of them that are more on the chunky side, and then 3 that are a little bit more smooth when they go to the lids. The mattes are super buttery and creamy. Like buttery and creamy in the way that like I feel like Viseart is. They're just super easy to work with. You've got deepening shades here. So much variety, so much. And I still felt like I can go a little bit more neutral without like just being a bland look on my eyes if I wanted to wear this every day. I just thought overall the quality of this, the versatility of this, so good. This next brand, I don't have a discount code, but I do have a link to my storefront where I just like included some of my favorite things from this brand. This is from Gloss Gods. It's Let's Get Nude palette. This, I believe, is their newest release. This is my favorite neutral palette of freaking all time. There's really good difference here between the matte shades, and the shimmers are so freaking different and beautiful, and some are sparkly and some are chunky foiled duochromes, and then some of them are like softer every day. Delightful, delightful. There's literally not a better nude palette in my collection. That's my personal opinion. Like, not a better all-in-one nude palette. I freaking love the shimmer formula. Matte formula is amazing as well. They blend perfectly. I literally kept creating looks out of this palette that was taking me like 30 seconds. So good. So good. The thing is, it's a Swedish brand, so the shipping sometimes can be a little bit of an undertaking. I feel like they ship right away, and they may not ship everywhere internationally, but they're so worth it. They are so worth it. And this palette, oh, 10 out of 10. Okay, you guys, the #1 palette that I tried this last quarter, was from St. Angel Sinners. It's the Reckless palette. I only did 1 look on my channel, but I had kept using this like so many times. I have done so many different looks with this thing, I can't even tell you. The versatility here is crazy. The layout is weird because the shimmers are all like on one side, but they're all like spread out in a weird way. You've got 1 multi-chrome that's a little bit softer, and then I feel like you have 3 different foiled chunky shades, and then you have 2 softer shimmers. But the mattes here, butter. They blend perfectly. They don't blend together and look like a hot mess. You can see distinctions. You can go neutral, but you can go colorful. It's not a heavy palette either, so it's not hard to work with. There's just so much going on here. So much. And this brown, chunky foiled brown shade I have worn all by itself. It's a great single shadow, like just one and done. There's so much that you can do here. Honestly, palettes like this that just keep me coming back for its versatility make me think about it, make it stand out in my collection. Also, if I'm trying to move quickly and create a look to get out the door, and that palette does it for me, oh, 10 out of 10. This was my first time trying the St. Angel Sinners formula, so I ended up going back and picking up more palettes. So you guys are gonna see more of their palettes in upcoming ranking videos. Also, this was in collaboration with Calvin Brockington Artistry. I don't know if this is still available, but you guys, I highly recommend their formula, or at least this palette, having tried it. And that is all 20 of the eyeshadow palettes that I tried in the last quarter ranked. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if you were interested in seeing looks that I created with any one of those palettes, please check out my channel. Every single one of those palettes is on there. If you guys are not currently subscribed, I'd love to see you subscribe. I'm out of here for today, you guys. I hope to catch y'all in my next video. Bye.